All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Spencer from Horizen Labs, VP of Ecosystem. Welcome to our spaces on Horizen 2.0 tokenomics, following the passage of ZEN IP 42407, which I'm sure that you all have committed to memory as a number already, so I don't need to remind you. Today's spaces will be recorded, which will be great. So for those who can't join, welcome, in some other type of space and time in the future. But I'm really, really excited to kind of dive in and talk about this. There's been a ton of work done on this. We've got all the right people in the room on it. I think that, it's a really important step in the sort of modernization and path forward of Horizen, which I think is no small thing. And I'm sure, Rob, that you'll talk about that as well. But why don't we get started by doing some introductions? I'll kind of pass the mic around. And Rob, we can start with you, and then we'll get into it from there.
Sure, Spencer. Thank you. I am Rob, co-founder of Horizen and CEO of Horizen Labs. Happy to be here. This should be a pretty fun conversation.
Cool. And Gustavo?
Hello, guys. So I'm a program manager at the Horizen Foundation, and I've been supporting Horizen for years. And I oversee the daily operations of the foundation and assist with the community and management and support. And I'll pass it to you, Spencer.
All right. And like I said, I'm Spencer, VP of Ecosystem Growth at Horizen Labs. Tyler, on to you.
Hey, thanks, Spencer. I'm the Director of Finance here at Horizen Labs.
Great. And finally, Dom.
Hey, guys. I'm a Senior Product Manager here at Horizen Labs, currently working on Horizen 2.
Cool. So, before we kind of really dive into it, Rob, I'm hoping that you can kind of take us through what, we've been sort of doing, where we've been, kind of the history of Horizen and how we've gotten here. I talk a lot, and I know that you talk a lot about the modernization of Horizen, which is really impressive in my mind, because when you go back and you look at so many projects kind of a similar vintage, they've just sort of kind of petered out over time, or kind of comfortable with what they're doing. Whereas, obviously with Horizen, there's been this kind of consistent push to evolve and go forward. So, it would be great if you want to kind of briefly cover for all of us both the transition away from being a privacy coin, as ZEN previously was, but is no longer, and sort of what we're doing right now, and how Horizen is kind of working towards becoming the home for ZK.
Happy to. And Spencer, I like how you frame this, and thinking about this in the context of the vintage of other projects that were that consisted of the world of Web3 back in 2016, 2017, when we launched with Horizen, or Zencash back then. The world's changed a lot, actually. And the industry that you see today is very different than the industry that existed back then. So just think, even though Zencash launched in 2017, May of 2017, the project actually started in, towards the end of 2016. So think about the world of crypto in 2016 and the things that mattered back then. And that's why, when I've recently been talking about Horizen as one of these OG projects out there, it comes back to that, because there were a set of values in 2016 and before then, like even literally back to the Satoshi early days of Bitcoin. What values were important to us as an industry, and the value in particular that, there were several of them, but the value in particular that we jumped on was this idea of privacy being super important, of the world's going first digital and then digital going on chain. You don't want the world seeing everything you're doing. Now, our ideas of what we would consider like a first generation privacy platform back in the Zencash days, it was simplistic, literally around the idea of a privacy coin, which is what ZEN was in the early days and is no longer a privacy coin. But there were other values. The other values were things like a fair launch. And what did a fair launch mean? It meant that you didn't have a large pre-mine. Like, pre-mines of tokens back then were actually considered really distasteful, guys, at least for like the cypherpunk segment of the industry that we came from. So things like that, like actually launching without like large VC investor allocations, without launching with pre-mines, without launching with like large team allocations. Literally, the fact that every Zen that exists today has been mined goes to the core values of the ecosystem that we were creating. And the big value, like overarching value on top of that, the problem that we were trying to solve in the industry was around privacy. Of course, simplistically starting with a privacy coin. But we had some other ideas, and Rolf, like as another one of the big architects of Zencash back then, had all these ideas around other applications that would advance privacy. Again, centered on having a privacy coin, Zen, but then like focusing on a bigger application environment. And guys, like even though we take it for granted today that EVMs and Ethereum are kind of standard for writing smart contracts, and now there's others, obviously, with SVM and other platforms. But these things, we can say they existed. Some of them existed, like Ethereum existed in 2016, but it did not have anywhere near the traction it does today, and did not have anywhere near, like DeFi did not exist in its current form when Zen launched. So this evolution that Spencer talked about was us basically, starting as this OG project with certain core values that I think today matter even more than they did back then, especially because it seems like the industry's forgotten a lot of them. And then kind of being on this evolutionary track of we didn't have perfect foresight of where the industry was going, but we had some ideas and we had some core competencies that others didn't, like expertise in zero knowledge cryptography, that then we took in certain directions. And what I can say in hindsight now is some of the directions we chose ended up being like not as valuable. Like some of the things that we thought, having an interoperable network of blockchains, I think will be a gold standard, but maybe we were a little bit earlier on it, and the other frameworks that exist today didn't exist back then to build it with. But we were kind of on the right track. And now circling back of like all the learnings that we've had over the years, and just seeing the industry evolve, and like learning how to deliver technology, and learning how to, like, we've specialized even deeper in ZK, and now we work with very common and super powerful frameworks, and being able to combine these things together and then link it back to our early core values, I think is powerful. And now that's where we stand today with Horizen 2 going out there to market, is we have the opportunity to kind of relaunch this thing in a way that leverages everything that we know, but linking it back to those core values that I argue are even more important today. So anyway, that's my summary in a nutshell, Spencer. So hopefully that that captures what you were thinking.
No, it does. I think it's great. I'm going to kind of put you on the spot a little bit here, where I think I've heard you say that, essentially Horizen was kind of one of the first ZK projects, right? And, everything that we're kind of seeing now, I don't think it's possible without, Horizen and, sort of similar things like that kind of coming first. And so really what we're talking about now is it's kind of a return to our roots in a lot of ways and sort of pushing forward into that next evolution. Is that fair?
100%. No, 100%, Spencer. But what I'll say, the linkage there is Zcash was the first on-chain ZK project, and it's to Zcash that we really owe so much as an industry, and us specifically here at Horizen, because we took Zcash tech in a slightly different direction in those early days. We weren't innovating on the ZK side yet at that point. We for sure have since then, and what you're going to see with Horizen 2 definitely does innovate and bring things together in an interesting, coherent way. But you're right, like that was part of our legacy of being like one of the first, I think the third probably ZK project that was actually out there on chain. So we're very proud of that legacy.
We can pretend that we were the first amongst this group. We won't tell anybody. Close enough. Cool. Yeah, thank you, Rob. So Tyler, I want to talk a little bit about the proposal in general and sort of what it does and the needs that it fills. But maybe where we can start is with sort of why sort of the old standards for Zen were not really optimal for growing the ecosystem. And then we can kind of get into why the new ones are.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Spencer. And I think this piggybacks really well on Rob's kind of opening statements about, the history of Horizen and the original vision for ZK applications in the ecosystem and how that may have changed. So I'm going to get a little fancy as well, Spencer, and drop a ZENIP number here. But, the community went out and supported this vision that Rob has kind of outlined with ZENIP 42406, the preceding ZENIP on the technical migration to Horizen 2. And that's what really kickstarted this, tokenomic project and the need for this revision. So I'm sure most of the crowd here is familiar with how emissions work currently in Horizen and the block rewards split. But just as a refresher course there, currently 60% of block rewards go to the proof of work miners on the main chain, right? So as we transition to a proof of stake system with Horizen 2, there's no more proof of work main chain. There's a need to repurpose that 60% of future block rewards and emissions. On top of that, now that the main chain and Eon are consolidating into a single chain environment, there's going to be a deprecation of the supernode pool and no more need for that tech in the architecture. So that means there's another 10% there of future block rewards that also it needs to find a new home in Horizen 2. So with the passage of that ZENIP, we're quickly realizing that, okay, there's 70% of future ZEN emissions that needs to be reallocated in Horizen 2. And, we saw that as an amazing opportunity. That's definitely not a negative for the ecosystem. And that's why we're here discussing that reallocation essentially.
Yeah. And, right. Cause you've seen this firsthand, especially like when we were building out Eon, there was a lot that just wasn't possible. Right. And a lot that's sort of restricted from not being able, to have kind of these new systems in place. So, do you see kind of a world in which we're kind of moving forward with, more sort of grant opportunities, more sorts of ecosystem growth opportunities? And speaking a little bit selfishly here, because a lot of that benefits me and makes my job easier and more fun. But, I think what do you think is going to be kind of the net effect in terms of being able to attract and draw projects and keep the ecosystem kind of cutting edge and modern?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think Rob alluded to the fact that, Horizen has never had that benefit as a community. It was a fair launch, zero start, proof of work mining economy. So there's never been a well-funded treasury for, the ecosystem and the community to access. So I don't want to steal Gustavo or anyone else's thunder about, how some of those resources might be deployed. And I'm sure we'll get into that. But the goal was to put the resources in place for us to execute on some of these visions that are being discussed.
Yeah, and I think that that's a good segue. In Gustavo, on your side, right, we know the Horizen Foundation share of block rewards is going to increase significantly. It'll increase to about 32.5% as part of this. So, it would be interesting to hear from you sort of what your hope for and what you see that increase be used for. And how you think that might play into ecosystem development, infrastructure, the growth of ZEN, the stability of it, and so forth.
So I think this increase equips the foundation with the resources to support the long-term network development and adopt a more strategic forward-thinking approach, whereas now we pretty much have more like day-to-day because of like finances and some restrictions in the budget. So I think it will open to new opportunities and partnerships that we couldn't pursue before. We will also focus on expanding Horizen utility and can now support initiatives to improve liquidity on both centralized exchanges and decentralized exchanges, which I think is crucial for building confidence in the ZEN token. And regarding infrastructure, I think the funds will allow us to integrate necessary features that we previously delayed due to lack of funding, and it will also be used to support the ongoing infrastructure needs. Back to you, Spencer.
Cool. And Rob, before I kind of pass it to Dom for some of his thoughts, I don't know if you had anything else to add there.
No, I'm not really. Like these guys nailed it. There's good and bad with launching the way we did as a completely fair project. And again, like I keep stressing, I think the fact that we launched as a fair project is going to matter a lot long term, especially as tokenomics evolve and kind of like token allocations are spent in other projects. And the fact that now we're circling back with and using this opportunity with the Horizon 2 relaunch to kind of rethink the remaining tokenomics distributions so that we can really point them back towards the community is a way to do it. I think something that's always been hard for us is how do you crowdsource innovation and how do you crowdsource kind of just like interesting initiatives that can actually grow the ecosystem. And now like some of the partnerships that we're looking to bring on board or other organizations that want to join our ecosystem or even just others out there that might be listening to this that want to participate, this now gives us finally the tools that we're going to need to actually modernize the ecosystem itself. So anyway, I'm pretty pumped for it. I think this is such an undervalued ZenIP in terms of what changes will come to our ecosystem because of it. But I think it's going to have big ripple effects.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, outside of the technology upgrades and migrations, like this is maybe the most important ZenIP, that we've ever really seen, just based on the kind of opportunities it opens up. I also want to kind of highlight something where you noted that it does make sense and will continue to benefit us that ZEN was a fair launch token. I think it's really important to note that what we're doing here, it's not like a quote unquote correction, it's an evolution. When it was launched, it was the right way to launch it. And I think that these changes right now are the right changes to be making in order to kind of move the ecosystem forward. So I'm really glad that you touched on that as well. Dom, I'm going to ask you kind of a similar question, which is, about a little bit under 28, I think 27.5%, more or less, of the ZEN emissions are going to go to the DAO treasury. A lot of that's going to go towards grants, towards growth and marketing, towards sort of bringing more stability to ZEN. In your mind, kind of what do you envision these funds being used for? And, why do you think that that's particularly important, I guess, in terms of, remaining hyper competitive?
Yeah, so I think this is a really good opportunity to use the value that we have in order to invest into projects that don't really exist yet. For me, the whole what Horizon 2 has to offer is essentially, decentralized computing or blockchain ledgers. They bring the positive value of solving the problem of trust, that the fact that you need to trust any centralized authority. But in doing so, what it does is it essentially makes all the data publicly available. I won't go into like every piece of thing that ZK could solve problems for, but essentially, in my view, it it solves a lot of the issues that blockchain with all the problems that it solves. There are some things that keeping all data available while using these decentralized applications is not always the best thing. So there's a lot of applications that have yet to be built because of that, and we see that there's going to be a future where there's going to be a lot of these applications being built. Any application where there's a need for confidentiality or a need to like obscure data. So what we want to do is we want to be first movers in those areas, and there's even applications for which we don't even know that they'll even be built yet because things are just not possible. So what we want to do is we want to leverage that funding to invest in these projects and really build like an ecosystem of builders that's very vibrant and contributes to the ecosystem. And we want to have a grants program that funds that, but also a sustainability program for which Horizen essentially becomes investors into these into the future of decentralized applications. And we want to work with projects that are really going to make a big dent in various industry sectors. So in doing so, we'll stand to benefit in the future and keep the network growing. So allocating the tokenomics in the way we did, I believe that it puts us in a really nice position in order to do that.
You said something that I really love, which is, that so much of this is going to be around promoting, new products and new types of products. I know that this is something that we've talked about before, and I think it's really, really important here, which is, part of the design of Horizen 2.0 and a lot of the work that you've done on it and a lot of what this pushes forward is, I don't think that we have any interest in just issuing sort of a generic all-purpose EVM here, right? The idea here is that Horizen 2.0 is going to be the best place for, zero knowledge based applications and use cases. And from my standpoint and from an ecosystem standpoint, that's really exciting because it gives it a centering point. And I also think that when we go out and we look there, out there, if you go and you do like a quick scan of something like GitHub, you'll see that there are tons and tons of projects that could be built here that people attempted to build, either a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and they couldn't really complete because of limitations on Ethereum, because of other limitations, things like that. And so, to me, I really want to kind of hammer home on that point that, as we're going out and as this budget is open to kind of increase adoption and encourage development, so much of it is going to be around kind of brand new and novel use cases. Dom, I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to talk to on that front, but I think that that's super cool and really exciting.
Yeah, I would say the EVM, being EVM compatible is really just a secondary characteristic or attribute um, of Horizen 2. The real power that comes from Horizen 2 is that, as there are so many different ways that a ZK app can be built, and a lot of the other protocols that are out there are either L2s or they have a lot of limitations as to uh, what their ZK capability is. Um, what we're seeing is that we are very bullish on ZK being part of really all computation, not only really decentralized computation because of the positive benefits that it holds. So the real power of Horizen 2 is that it's a decentralized network that, because of its EVM compatibility, does take in or can support a large part of the ecosystem. But more so is that anybody who builds, say, like a custom ZK application, they're not really constrained by, oh, we can only use this ZK snark, we could only use this ZK primitive. Really, what we want is developers coming on board and saying, hey, I have this new idea for um, this new game, or like say this AI software, right? And if I were to build something from scratch, I want to be able to choose any ZK primitive, and maybe I'm building a new application and a new DSL for which there is no ZK snark sort of available for me to use, and I need to create a new circuit or anything of that nature. Really, what we're focused on is making sure that there is verification possibility with the whatever ZK primitive this venture or developer is using, and that they could use that in a decentralized fashion. Um, so initially, we're going to be very focused on like what are all of the possible ways in which we could verify proofs, and then perhaps down the line, once Horizen 2 is out, like what does the roadmap look like? It's about providing the developers the tools they need in order to create the applications they're looking to create, and perhaps we could deliver other features that make it easier for developers to do such a thing.
Cool. To shift topics a little bit, Rob, we've heard pretty loudly and clearly, the desire from the community to keep the max ZEN supply of $21 million. I'm sorry, of 21 million ZEN. This is something that I know you've shown a lot of support for and that you've argued pretty vigorously for as well. As kind of the co-founder of Horizen, which obviously was originally Zencash, I'd love to hear a little bit from you about why you think that it's so important. And I know that we talked about this a little bit before, but it'd be great to get some expansion on, how you see kind of ZEN's OG status playing an important role kind of in the ongoing marketability and growth of ZEN.
No, totally, Spencer. So first of all, there's nothing magical about 21 million. Right? 21 million is the number chosen by Satoshi for launching Bitcoin. And like in the earlier days of like new projects for what ended up being Web3, like a lot of people, you'd kind of like fork a repo and inherit a code base, and like many projects would choose to just keep the same token supply as kind of like an ode to Satoshi, right? An ode to Bitcoin. That's what we did, right? And like there's nothing magical about that particular number. But what is important though is linking it back to like one, having like the point of these systems and hard capping a supply like that was actually to have like in the long run, like solving like one of the reasons why Bitcoin exists today was kind of if you look at the hexadecimal message in the first Bitcoin transaction is actually a response to the financial crisis and like central banks like printing a ton of currency around it to kind of bail out banks. So like that's why these hard caps existed, and we inherited that for a reason, because we also subscribed early on in our culture as a community that we wanted a hard cap supply. So what that could mean long term is if there's actual traction to the network and usage, that essentially is sort of like a deflationary thing, and it provides this kind of value to people that are early token holders, right? You buy the token early on is sort of like a bet of confidence that this network is going to build a real community with real utility around it. And over time, the token has the possibility of going up. And one of the mechanisms there was having a cap supply. So not to go too much into that, but like just to say the part that you should tease out of that is there's kind of a cultural component to this, of like linking it back to like cypherpunk elements, like that kind of cultural reaction to the bank bailouts that were happening around the world in like 2008, 2009. That forms the genesis for Bitcoin, and from where we came as a project with Zencash. So that's why I think it was important as we're thinking through changing tokenomics. There was a proposal going around where people were talking, like including myself, exploring the idea: does it make sense to radically change the tokenomics, right? To like change everything. Like is everything up for change? And then I think just feedback from the community, and just what felt right for me as well, was just sticking to the cultural origins here of like hard cap 21 million supply. In a way, that's like a social contract that everyone has bought into by joining this ecosystem. And I think those types of social contracts should be sacrosanct, or at least like very resistant to change and have like very, very good reasons for changing them. And right now, I think we got the best of both worlds. Is we retain that cultural link, and I think we should emphasize that, guys, as a community. But then we had everything else on the table for flexible design. And Tyler went into some of the details here, and the others as well, of like what the possibilities of that are. But with that one constraint, 21 million hard cap constraint, we retain that. Then everything else is on the table for like yet to be emitted ZEN. And I think that was a cool compromise that we had. And just you see the overwhelming support from the community behind the ZEN app. I think resulted from that. I think had we proposed changing the 21 million cap, we would have had probably very different results when it came to voting.
Yeah, and I think, to follow up on that, obviously one of the things that was discussed in depth and put on the docket for change was, replacing the halving schedule with a more smoothly declining ZEN emissions rate. Tyler, do you want to talk to that a little bit and sort of the reasons for it?
Yeah, definitely. I think this really corresponds as well to like a discussion on the thinking around collator rewards. Dom and I in particular spent a lot of time on this modeling, etc. And just want to get it out there to the community that the goal of setting the forager, the collator rewards where we did is to make sure that there is no crowding out of current supernode operators or Eon foragers and delegates. So that was kind of the case scenario that Dom and I wanted to plan for initially is, come one, come all supernode participants and Eon forger delegates. And we want them to have a home in the collator economics. So I think, some people might have noticed that the 40% rewards, which will be post halving of ZEN, so there's a halving that's coming up towards the end of the year. So that 40% in that future state next year post migration is equivalent to the 20% that is currently being allocated to the supernode and Eon Forager pools, right? So I just wanted to make sure like that was the goal there, as a starting point for Horizen 2. And then secondarily, I guess to answer your question, Spencer, Dom and I, like, we definitely came across this idea of smoothing the emission curve in researching Zcash and how they're potentially handling their transition to proof of stake. And I mean, the goal simply is to remove any drastic or spastic responses in collator economics around a halving event that occurs periodically once every 4 years, right? So we want the collator ecosystem to be smoothly reacting to changes in the emission rate over time. We don't want to have one kind of Y2K-esque event every 4 years, that the community has to react to in one swift movement.
Yeah, Y2K is good. I don't know, metaphor, I guess, there. But no, that makes sense, and I'm excited to kind of see what happens with a little bit of that increased stability, the ability for people to plan a little bit better and more consistently around it. I think that's going to definitely be a game changer here. So thank you for explaining that, Tyler. And then, Dom, to kind of shift subjects for just a minute here, you're obviously the product manager leading the Horizen 2.0 upgrade. Can you just kind of briefly take us through where we are in that process on the development side, sort of what's coming next, and then, the always and perpetual question, when, and, kind of go from there?
Yeah, perhaps too, what we could do is maybe show what the roadmap is, and basically we're following almost exactly, aside from a few new updates, what was originally proposed in the original ZEN IP and all of the milestones that we need to reach. So I would say we're like halfway through development. And the end of this sprint, we're looking to finish completing, from a development perspective, both a consensus staking mechanism on Horizen 2, as well as preparations for transfer of balances from ZenD main chain. What I think is more important to talk about, though, is when we're looking to go to testnet in December, and possibly mainnet in Q1, and everything seems pretty to be pretty aligned to that. I think testnet is going to be a really important part for us. For one, it's going to start the building process, and both the grant program and possible sustainability program to get some projects to start building and testing the network. And we want to have an incentivized reason to build on Horizen 2 during the testnet process. It's also going to be an important part for us to get our partners to prepare them for the launch, and that's actually going to be a big effort and undertaking. And that's essentially what we want to do during testnet, is prepare all of the partnerships, but also start the building process. We want people to be building new applications on testnet that involve ZK computation, and pretty much build ZK apps and uh, uh, gear us up for when we do actually go to mainnet.
So that's a little bit of alpha, right? Incentivized testnet. We're doing it.
Yeah, what we want to do is we want an incentive for you to build on Horizen. We want to see a vibrant ecosystem of builders. There's a lot of exciting things that we could that we have ideas for certain objectives, certain grants, or certain ways that we want to incentivize builders. There are tons of different applications that we want to see built on Horizon 2. And not only that, we want a vibrant community. So not only builders, we do want people who are going to spread the word, and we want to incentivize that behavior as well.
Nice. I'm going to go around really quickly, and I want to kind of hear what is kind of exciting everybody the most about, the new ecosystem. Gustavo, why don't we start with you and kind of, what do you see as the most exciting thing from either a narrative standpoint or, from an application standpoint, or really from any other standpoint? And then we can kind of circle around there.
I think for Horizon 2.0, it's a major shift from where we were. And I think we are also going to better equip in terms of the governance. And now we are going to have the means to support the ecosystem with the grants, the sustainability approach. So for me, Spencer, I think it's really hard to pinpoint one thing specifically because honestly, I'm excited with everything regarding this proposal and Horizon 2.0.
Nice. Tyler, what are you most excited for?
Yeah, I think it's the sustainability initiative. I think that's a really unique thing that we are looking for a lot of community and ecosystem participation in. And the thinking there is, all about the long-term sustainability of the Horizon ecosystem, right? We don't want to have a finite amount of rewards, thinking over the next 100 years. We need to begin creating flywheels now for how, benefit and financial gain is returned back to the ecosystem, as far as the foundation, the DAO treasury, even funding, proof of stake rewards for collators, right? We need to be seeing long down the road. And I think creating, commercial structures with protocols that we are funding in the ecosystem, and not just having it be a money grab for resources over the next 4 years is going to define the success of the ecosystem.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think I would also just add to that I'm just super, super, super excited to see Horizon kind of take the next step in its story. I know that I was touching on this earlier, but I'll touch on it again, which is I really think that it's no small thing that, Horizon could have just rested on its laurels. We never needed to build, Eon. We didn't necessarily need to be moving towards this, but seeing it kind of grow and evolve is both, really exciting. It's inspiring to me personally, and I hope that people really do kind of catch on to it, because I think that it's a really important part of the narrative. And just being able to have the ability to kind of go out and do all the things that have been talked about within the community, at Horizen Labs, within the Horizen Foundation, for so long, and just being able to open all of those possibilities up and push us forward. It just feels like it's going to happen really fast. I don't want to say that it's going to surprise people, but it might surprise people a bit. Rob, I'm going to ask you kind of the same question, and I would also love to know, sort of what types of apps and builders you're most excited to see join the ecosystem.
Okay, so first of all, I want to say, what phenomenal answers from all of you guys. I couldn't agree more with all of this and all of the reasons to be excited. So I'm not going to reiterate those, but I'll I'll jump right to, I think this is an opportunity for us to kind of get back to our roots and really focus on the culture that is Horizen. And I think culture defines community. And then ultimately that leads to use cases. So what's interesting for me, or what I'm super excited about, is a multitude of things for sure. But now from a technical perspective, we're just settling on a framework, or like a technology framework, on top of which we know that we can build out the ecosystem, kind of a values-based ecosystem that we're going for. And I think it's up to us to define exactly what that values-based ecosystem is going to be. But if it comes back to our roots, maybe we launch as a first-generation privacy platform, and maybe now we're talking about being like a third-generation one, or something like that, right? And then that defines, like we're giving a bunch of resources and tools directly to the community with this this new ZEN that's just passed. And it'll be, I'm really excited for the grant programs that will come about, where Spencer said it'll make his life easier because he's going to be architecting a bunch of these things. And I know there's some really phenomenal partners and tools that are going to come on board to help us grow that out. And what that means specifically is help the community take charge of its own grant program. I think it is amazing. And then that ultimately leads towards what end? And this comes towards Tyler's great point of, guys, this is not a money grab. This is not like, if the community sees this shift in tokenomics and as a money grab for people just kind of coming in and taking what they can from these grant programs and so forth, and not giving back, this is going to be a failed ecosystem long term. But if on the other hand, we're judicious about how resources are allocated towards what programs in a way that actually leads towards long-term sustainability, we're creating a really cool decentralized economy or community here that can last long term and actually provide some real good to the world. So that's ultimately I'm an optimistic dreamer in some ways, where I'm not here, guys, just for the monetary aspects of what are possible with these ecosystems. I think that if we don't make the world substantively better in a measurable way that we can point to and be proud of, we're not doing our jobs. So I think all of this is coming together, enabled, by this one, a series of ZEN and years of kind of trial and error as a community, from the technology to how we focus use cases and so forth. But now the rubber's gonna hit the road with this new, the resources that are available here with the new technology framework that we're working with, that is just running like a machine behind the scenes and gearing up towards the incentivized testnet. And then it's going to be all about use cases and traction, and then we're going to just have measurable KPIs of what types of use cases are generating what types of network volume, and how is that actually, what contribution of that network volume is actually flowing back to the community directly. These are the things that I'm really excited to quantify and see come to life. And I think this is just one important piece of the puzzle that's coming together to make that a reality.
Yeah, and I think, one of the goals of what we're doing generally is that we want, to decentralize, right? We want to put power into the hands of the community. I think that these systems give us more ways to do that, right? They open up more liquidity, they open up more opportunities, whether those be for grants or agreements or, just initiatives. And I think what I'm really excited about is, this sort of future where, Horizen Labs is always and consistently a very important and primary builder in the ecosystem, but we're welcoming more and more people in. And I think that that's going to be more possible than it ever has been before because of this. And so, excellent points all around. I think the final question on my end, and maybe Tyler, this is for you, is again, when? When do we think that some of these extra funds are going to be available? And this is also a question for you, Dom, I suppose, as well. When do we see this opening up? I know obviously we're doing a lot of the planning and the preparation on our side right now, but what timeline can kind of people expect for stuff to all go into effect?
Yeah, I think that's important just to set the tone that, Dom and I and the team did a lot of research of, how DAO and foundation funds have been unlocked for a lot of these leading ecosystems that have had access to big treasuries. And what we found is kind of the almost accepted model was, for 25% of any of these allocations to unlock at TGE, or in our case, that would be migration, and then the remaining funds to vest linearly over 4 years. So divide the remaining 75% by 48, and that's what's coming out each month. And then, each of those allocations is definitely going to follow a different path, right, as far as unlocking or being available to the community. And Spencer, I think this is your wheelhouse, obviously, but I think what the community should familiarize themselves with is kind of the Polkadot governance models, right? Because that's basically going to be some of the palettes or some of the systems that are available to the Horizen 2 community. So we are going to have to adjust how, the mechanics of our governance, but I believe, that's basically where things are trending, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's a whole nother AMA around that, because I think that having studied all of that deeply, and you guys know this as well, there are huge benefits to that model. There are also huge drawbacks, but we have a chance to kind of create I don't want to, maybe I'm just going to start calling it OpenGov 3.0, which sort of, fixes a number of the things on there, but that obviously is a whole nother discussion. But this opens that up, right? That wasn't possible before. So it's a great point, and it's really exciting to see, where we kind of boost parts of that, where we put rails around other parts of it, and, how we kind of use that to kind of build the system forward. I don't think that we want just the sort of like Wild West of Polkadot funding through the DAO, but we don't have to, right? And that's one of the nice things about OpenGov as well. But like I said, we could talk about that endlessly. That's a whole another topic for a whole another time. Any kind of final thoughts from anybody on the panel before we see if there are any community questions or anybody has any questions that they'd like to raise? All right. If anybody has a question, would like to raise their hand, now would be a great time. Otherwise, we're running up against time here, so we can sort of go upon our merry ways and get back to work. But now would be the time if anybody has any questions that they would like to raise. Man, shy group. I'm so used to doing AMAs with all of the apes, and everybody is jumping on questions. But I'm glad, I guess, everybody understands really well what we're talking about and is excited about it. So, let's go. Dom, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, ask questions on Discord if you have any. I've been trying to answer some questions there to really talk about Horizen's vision and the possibilities. What you have available to you, as well as the white paper. I would definitely focus on the use cases section of the white paper that really goes into some of the possibilities. But keep an eye out for testnet. When we go to testnet, there is going to be a lot more information available. We want to really communicate to all of the users and builders during that time. We'll have documentation ready, as well as a lot of information on our website that could really direct you people of interest.
Awesome. Mr. Hype, my friend, it looks like you have a question.
Yeah. Hey, finally seeing the tokenomics going through, and congratulations, guys, for all the process going on. I'm really excited to see the journey that Horizen Labs doing in Horizen 2.0, and especially about the ZK Verify. I think that's a brilliant approach that you're actually going through with a zero knowledge layer. I just want to have a question also to the builders here. So you mentioned that on the testnet will be very soon, and there's Horizen 2.0, and there's also ZK Verified, which will be separate but also integrate to the same chain. Do you want to be on the testnet? Like, the goal for the testnet will be on the ZK apps, or maybe about the EVM chain? What will be the main purpose on the testnet for you guys?
Rob?
I could jump. Yeah, I could jump in and answer that one. You're right. These are two tightly coupled ecosystems with ZK Verify and Horizon 2, because Horizon 2 is being launched on top of ZK Verify. And the framework that makes it possible is Substrate. So ZK Verify is built in Substrate, and then we have basically a parachain that on top of that is the architecture that Horizon 2 is using. So, there's a logical sequence here, ZK Verify, because it's the relay chain, that kind of underlying infrastructure needs to launch first, and then Horizon 2 can launch on top of that. So that has to happen, at least as a minimum precursor. Now, the good news from a testnet perspective is that ZK Verify has been on a public testnet for the last few months and already has this incentivized testnet launched. And the main point of kind of like what users are trying to attract right now is ZK Verify has a really cool like dev education program that has, I think, as of now, like 8,500 devs that have gone through it to learn about ZK Verify and learn about what's possible with it to build applications that use it. And the next step for Horizon 2 to launch, so Horizon 2 is more about applications. So like if you look at ZK Verify as more of like an underlying important critical infrastructure layer, you've got Horizon 2 is kind of the application layer, because EVM, it'll just be much easier to build all types of applications that Web3 devs are used to building, if not even just easily porting over applications that exist on other EVMs. So that'll be much more kind of like DApp dev focused. And then there'll be you can talk to Dom and others that are actually constructing the incentive programs, but then we'll also have like really strong community building programs on there.
Yeah, I also think it's a good moment to sort of note that, right, there's ZK Verify and there's Horizen 2.0. And Horizen 2.0, we believe is really going to be the best place to build ZK apps. I think it's really important also to just note it's not, a quote unquote ZK EVM. It's an EVM on which to build ZK apps. And so it focuses on a little bit of a different thing there, which I always just want to remind people of. But, I think with ZK Verify, there's this really, really great opportunity and recognition that there are going to be people building ZK apps in lots of ecosystems. They're going to be building ZK apps that may be off-chain and want to verify on-chain. And so being able to sort of have both sides of that, where we're offering a best-in-class experience and support and resources to people who want to build directly within the Horizen ecosystem, but also being able to touch people who are building on ApeChain, on Arbitrum, on Ethereum, wherever they may be, it is going to be really, really important in kind of pushing the entire space forward, and sort of making sure that we're able to kind of bring a suite of products that helps people who want to build ZK applications no matter where they are. So, I think it's really exciting, and I think that it's the right approach because we're not leaving anything on the table there. And I'm excited to see kind of how it goes. Cool. Rob, any last thoughts on your part?
Look, guys, I mean, without rehashing all of the stuff that you've heard here, getting back to why we're here. So the Horizen's been around for a while, since 2017, again, from the ZEN Cache days. And it is no small feat that we are where we are right now, given the vintage of projects that, our cohort of peers when we launched, because the world was way different back then. The tools, the frameworks, the ways of thinking, the tokenomics, everything was different. Here we are now, and I think this is our opportunity to really have the best of both worlds, like have those OG core values that are really meaningful, and again, like I keep arguing, will be even more meaningful long term, and combine that with the best of the current state of technology, with like a renewed core kind of vision and mission that matters, and with now with the passing of the ZEN on tokenomics, modern tokenomics, to actually empower all of this. So no, you've heard different perspectives on this call, guys, but I have to say, just from like just coming back to basics, this is just super cool to be here, and it's super cool to see how these types of ecosystems can evolve and just get a life of their own.
Awesome. So we're just at about time, so we can sort of end it here. But thank you, everybody, for joining. This was a super, super great conversation, really insightful. We got a little bit of alpha, which is always some of the goal as well. And, you know, I had a great time. And what I would encourage everybody to do is please, you know, follow Horizen on social, Horizen Labs on social, horizen.io. If you want to follow along with progress, there's Discord as well. You know, everybody who's up here has a lot of great and consistent thoughts here on X as well. So please give them a follow. And, you know, thank you so much for joining us and looking forward to the next one. Thanks all.